Hello, hello. What's up, everyone? Pushed back just a little bit. Pushed back 15 minutes. Had a meeting pop up, so needed to knock that out real quick. I got like an exclamation point on this thing. What's the problem here on the sound level? System audio. I'm assuming people can hear me and see me okay, so thanks for joining live. Let's jump right in. I was thinking, let's actually start here. I was thinking about this and I was just taking a look to make sure I remembered right. Like 20 years ago, I was a Rails developer for a little while. Honestly, it was probably like version 3.2. Yeah, 3.2. Look at that. So way back. But one of the things I remember inside of Rails was that they had like a find. Yeah, I was just searching for it. They had this findBy method. And it basically worked kind of like Eloquent's find, but Eloquent find assumes the key, that you're searching by primary key. But with findBy, it was a little bit more dynamic. You could say like first name, and that would be the column that you would find by, and it would find a single record. So much like, doing user where, where first, for example. We have equivalent stuff that exists inside of Laravel Eloquent, but I just remember the dynamic methods here. I think they had something more dynamic than this. Yeah, you could say like find by exclamation point to be like find or fail. It defaults to ID, I think. Here we go. Dynamic finders. So find by underscore first name. So for example, you could find by that column just by calling the method that way. I really like that shorthand. This dynamic one is the shorthand that I miss. So this is kind of where the inspiration comes from. Laravel has a lot of inspiration from Rails. Taylor, kind of openly talks about that. Why not, right? Like it's a proven web framework as well. So let's get into a model and just kind of take a look at like what we're talking about here. What are these shorthands? Again, all these things that I'm putting in this additions package, there's ways to do them in Laravel already. They're kind of just like streamlines that I find myself still using, even after writing, Laravel for 10 years, right? So, for example, let's just make another like public function example. This doesn't really matter. Let's just write a couple of these out. So right now, let's say if I wanted to find a user by an email address, I could say something like, obviously I could say something like where email equals, shift@laravelshift.com and then first, right? And of course I could do like first or fail. I could do a lot of stuff there. You could also do, I think you can say where first. Is that right? Let's throw a query on here so we get a little bit of a better completion. I think you can say where first, or first where. I always forget which way it is. Yeah, first where, and then you can drop this part, right? There's another example of the way in which you can say it. Can you say where email? I don't think that's real, but even if it was, you still have to put on first there. So again, all these are kind of like really, really dense. I would love to, again, just be able to say something like find by email, and then I put in, shift@laravelshift.com. There's no denying that this is clearly, shorter, right? And you could even go so far as to say like, find by email, you could even say like or fail or something here. If we really wanted to get crazy, like we could say like find or fail by email. That doesn't read as well. We'll figure out the or fail part. I don't want to get too crazy. For right now, this is the goal, right? This is the goal. So that's kind of what I want to build. Given Eloquent's like super dynamic nature, meaning its heavy use of magic methods, I don't know. I'm not too sure how we're going to write this. So let's figure it out. Okay. So here's kind of what we want to write. We want this example, right? We want to bring this to life, this find by email. So let's dig around in Eloquent for a second. Let's jump down to user, which extends model. And what I want to know is, do they have a call static? Yes, they do. Okay. They already have a call static. I was kind of hoping they wouldn't. But they have a call static, which that's probably fine. We're really just going to expand this into something else anyway. What I'm curious about is PHP trait. Oh, I already searched this. Can you do 9 years ago? Jeez. I'm open sourcing a trait which includes a magic method. Holy shit! Holy shit! I asked this. Oh, that's hilarious. I asked this. What was the answer? Can I invoke a parent's call method from the call method in the trait? If this is not possible from within the trait directly, how might I? Not if it's inherited. Okay. What the heck? All right. Please check code below. Okay, so I marked the answer. Okay, so you got is call. Ooh. 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 Remember we talked about this actually? We talked about this when we were looking at the policies. There's a difference between is callable and method exists. And it looks like you can kind of hack it a little bit. That's pretty cool. Look at that. That's pretty cool. Okay, so you can do this. Now, do I have to do any kind of like with or override or as? No, you don't. You can just use the trait. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I asked this 10 years ago. That's funny. Okay, let's prove this. Let's prove this. Let's say something like use findBy. Okay, and I'm gonna get over here in our app. Let's just build it all right here for now. I think it's easier. We're gonna be able to see it. Because then we can get in Tinker and we can do fun stuff. So let's do this. Let's do directory, traits. Let's jump in here. I could have just done a new file, but whatever. And let's call this findby.php. Okay, yeah, don't ask me that again. And we'll say PHP namespace app traits. All right, and then we'll say trait findby. And then this is basically, for now, it just has a public static function, call static. And we'll just say dump name. We'll say method. Let's call this method. Method. All right, we'll just dump the method. Okay, so let's see that it actually gets in here first of all. So I'm hearing some chat bubbles. What do we got in the chat? Yeah, 10 years ago. Yeah, no, hilarious. All right. Okay, so let's get into PHP Artisan Tinker, and let's say something like user find by email. Okay, find. Oh, we didn't import it. Sorry. Boop boop boop. Let's import it. Okay. Yeah, 10 years ago, I still don't even know the answer. That's hilarious. Okay. Declaration of app find by call static methods must be compatible with Illuminate call static method. Oh, I type hinted. Okay. Can't do that. Can't do that. But it's not griping. It's actually attempting to call the other. So that's kind of cool. Okay, let's kill this again. Find by email. No. Okay, so it goes there. Now, can we, to the point of my question 10 years ago, can we delegate to parent? So let's just do something like this. Let's say parent : call static method arguments. Now I would expect a much denser exception, right? We don't need to return anything here because we're just going to call it. Although we probably should return. What do we do here? Does this return? Yeah, this returns. We probably should return parent call static. There we go. Okay, so it should dump out findBy and then it should explode that the findBy method doesn't exist on user. That's what I would expect. It just does null. It just does null. So it doesn't seem like it's calling parent static. Let's prove that by putting in a dump in parent. This is what I was kind of worried about. Oh, hold on. I gotta kill the... Okay, there we go. Called on. There we go. Exactly what we expected. It goes in findBy email in our trait. We don't have to do any like special aliasing of the call static method, which is what I wanted to avoid. Great. So we're getting in our findBy email. We're not doing anything right now. Then we're calling parent, which is good, and then it explodes because findBy email is not a method on user, which is totally fine. That's totally fine. Okay, so now one last thing I want to check. What if I wrote findBy email in the user class? Now, again, I don't need to search my 10-year-old answers for this. I would expect it to just call that and never call static because the method actually exists. Let's just prove that though, because again, I don't want to break anybody's existing code. So if I did have a public static function findBy email defined here, right? We'll just dump user land code, right? Let's kill Tinker so it refreshes the app and run this again. User land code returns nothing. Perfect. Okay, so I'm not going to break any existing code if someone actually wrote findBy whatever functions. So we've proven that we're not going to break anything in userland code. We don't break Eloquent's call chain, meaning we're still going to delegate on to call static if this isn't a findBy method. But we have a nice, simple magic method that we can write in this trait. We don't have to do any aliasing in our user model. We can just say findBy, and it'll still delegate on to Eloquent if it's not a findBy call. Now it's time to write the logic that we actually care about. This is the easy part. Okay, so I'm going to pseudocode this out because that's what I like to do. So basically I'm going to say something like ensure this is a findBy star method, right? Then we'll want to if not, call parent, and then otherwise we would basically snake case the suffix, and then we'd put that into static. We could just say something like static query where static query where column, let's not get too specific here. And then it's like arguments and then first. We would do something like this. And again, I'm just gonna write like the full explicit thing here because you might get a little bit better completion, right? So we would return that. So this one's not as pseudocodey, but this is basically what we want to do, right? So first things first, we'll say if str starts with findBy, and again we're gonna be do we want to be case sensitive here? Do we want to PHP's, we talked about this before, PHP is not case sensitive, so we're just gonna do that. We'll do str to lower on the method, and then let's say if it doesn't start with findBy. If it doesn't start with findBy, then we know to just delegate this on to the parent, right? We're not going to do anything. So let's just do that. That's going to be a guard clause. So now we know that it's our thing. So what we want to do now is we want to take the actual kind of column name. So the column name is going to be, let's stringify this. Yeah. Let's do an str here on method, and let's get, we'll say after, or can we say substring? Yeah. Let's just say substring 6. That's going to make life easier. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to want to Here's the weird thing. We're going to assume by convention the column name assumption is snake case. That may not be the best assumption for everyone. Is it conventional Laravel? I would say yes. But I could see that being an interesting thing. Now, can we overcome that with a PR or a little bit of configuration or something? Absolutely. But I think the base case, the 80-20, the majority case is let's snake this. Okay. And so now what I want to do for now is let's just DD column and make sure we're on the right track, because that's a little bit dense. We'll say value. Oh my goodness, if I could type, we'll say value. There you go. Okay, so we're going to get the column by taking the substring, the suffix of method name. We're going to snake case it, and that should give us now a column name. And let's test this. Let's test it live. There we go. Okay, so run this. Oh, userland code. Sorry. Boop, boop. Let's get rid of userland code. We could have wrote something else, but whatever. Okay, parent. Did I write that backwards? Oh, starts. Needle, haystack, haystack, needle. Hello, people. All right, here we go. There we go. Haystack, needle. All right, let's kill this. Tinker it again. Find by email. Email. Perfect. Let's do it with something harder. User find by first name. First name. Underscored. Lowercase underscore. Okay, so again, assuming this convention, right? I would think that if someone, let's just, while we're thinking about it, if someone wanted to like preserve the case here or something, right? It would be very simple to just say something like public static preserve case, equals false. Oh my goodness. False. And then down here you would just not do that part. So if preserve case was true, we would just not do that part, right? So that way for your specific model, you could theoretically say you'd probably drop the static, but the point is you could have some kind of bool here or some kind of other method that this would call on your model to say should it or should it not preserve the case, right? So if for some reason you were doing title case column names or something, we could call that method. We could just do a callback where you determine what the method name is, right? So again, pretty ugly, but I think this satisfies the majority case. So the final thing to do is right here. Let's bring this to life. Column now becomes column. Arguments are just straight the arguments passed in. Or wait, no. What are arguments? It would be argument 0. Well, let's test it. I think this would be argument 0, to be honest. Let's do dump. We got to test this out because you can pass a query a lot of different things, right? You can pass a lot of different things to findBy. We're gonna need to think about that. This isn't as straightforward as I thought. Let's bring this back to life. Let's go back to email. Let's just throw in JSON, support at laravelshift.com. Yeah, see, it's argument 0. It's argument 0. Would you ever pass this more stuff? Hey Tom, how's it going? From the Netherlands. Nice. Hey Meller, how's it going? Samuel. Is that Muhammad? Mahmoud? I'm sorry. I apologize for my Americanness. I can't say that properly. Okay, let's get back to where we're going here. Here's what I'm thinking. Let me demonstrate what I'm thinking with code. Right now, you can call find with 1, 2. I think you can call this with find with 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And it would attempt to find a set of users doing that. Right? So the point here, this is actually underneath looking up, one user ID 1, 2, 3. Now we just have 2 in the database. But let's just do like a user factory just to prove this. Let's do a user factory create. There we go. We got 4. So let's put in 1, 2, 3, 4. We're only getting 2. Am I doing that right? Maybe this has to be an array. This might have to be an array. There it is. There you go. Here's all of our random people, test users and stuff. Okay, so sorry, it has to be array. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. If you pass in a single, we definitely need to get array 0. You're never going to pass in multiple arguments to this method necessarily. Or we could spread them. We could spread them out. No, because then we won't be able to pass it to the parent effectively. Okay, within our method, we could spread out the arguments. And then if you have multiple, we don't call first anymore. We would just run the query, is the point. Yeah, Tom, you're right. Why did this? You're right. Why did this return 2? That's very, very. That's kind of blowing my mind. Why did this return 2 and 2 when I called it with 1, 2, 3, 4? I think if we dig deep down into find, I think the second parameter truly exists. Let's go on a rabbit hunt real quick. Let me just do that. It's not here. It's actually in builder, I think. Let me get down into the builder. If we get into call, we actually forward called a new query, which returns a builder. This has find. There it is, columns. That's why. What this found, it does columns is the second thing. ID can be an array. If it's an array, if it's not an array, what's happening was I was effectively calling find with 1, 2, and it ignored 3, 4. So what happened was there is no column 2, but SQL just said where 2, so it gave us 2 back, right? So that's very nuanced, but that's what happened, is it treated 2 like a column name, and then it selected 2 with, what did it select it with? Yeah, just 2 was 2, right? 2 was a literal 2, and then it ID'd it by the key, which was 2, right? So what this found was, if we did a dump on it, it basically would have been like, select, 2 from users, where ID is 2, and then Eloquent keyed it that way. So pretty weird, but that's what happened. Okay, anyway, let's go back to our code. I think what I want to do, let's spread this out and dump this, okay? Let's spread this out and dump this real quick and see what happens. So let's go back to our code. Let's go back to find by email. Okay, so line 15 just gives us that. But if we were to also say something like bot at laravelshift.com, we get 2 dumps. It's dumping out each individual value. Sorry, I'm not like talking. I was out last week and I'm not talking very well as I'm thinking. Let me Yeah, exactly. Select 2 from users where ID equals 2 in our case. It still would have been, oh, sorry, you're right. ID would have been 1, my bad. Yes. And because it didn't select the ID, it just keyed it as 2 and 2. Yeah, that's the exact SQL. Nice. Okay, so here's what I'm really saying here. We're really saying that values is that, right? And now, oh, you can't spread it that way. Crap. You can't spread it that way. Here, let me pseudocode it out. I'm not doing a good job here. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to do is if argument, let's just say if past variadic arguments. Also, do we want to support columns? Do we want to support columns? There's a lot of questions left here. Let's finish this out. So, do we want to support columns? ... Do we want to support columns? Find technically supports columns. If we're mirroring this off of find and we're just throwing in by to make it a little more human readable, find by email should effectively behave the same way as find by ID, which is just find in Eloquent. So that given what we just learned about that whole 2-2 rabbit hole, really, we need to handle columns. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to say select. Select is, or well, yeah, you could cast arguments to an array in the first place, yeah. Okay, so let's say this. Let's say select equals arguments 1 or star. Okay, I do think we should support columns. It's going to give us the most versatility. Now we have to say, we need to know when to chain first or not. Because we don't want to chain first. We don't want to chain first. We don't even really want to chain select. So let's just say query. Wow. I am off today. I've said this before on the stream, but if I stand like 2 inches this way or this way, keyboard's way off. I'm so used to standing right here. Okay, so let's take this part. And this becomes this. I think where automatically behaves, I'm pretty sure where automatically behaves correctly on the where in. If column is instance of closure, okay, so value, okay, so get function get args, where, no, it just compacts it. Array of wheres. No, that's column, sorry. Where's value? Add binding where. I was trying to figure out if where automatically behaves like wherein if value is an array. But I don't think that that's true. I don't think that that's true. So, how does find work? We just were looking at find. How does find work? Find says is array, and it kills find many. Find many. Where key IDs. Does where key just do, yeah, it does a where in. Yeah, okay. All right, so we need to kind of mirror that as well. Okay, let's pull this off. So we got our base query. Now we got to build up this query based on the arguments that came in, which is it's a little bit ugly, but we're going to do it. So basically we say is array arguments 0, right? So if it's an array, then we say query equals query wherein column and then arguments 0, right? Otherwise it's just a where. All right, and then if, we could say if argument, we could tack the select on earlier to just save ourselves a little bit of trouble here. So yeah, we could basically say if is set arguments 1, meaning you're passing in the columns, then we know to select, that we would now say query equals query select arguments 1. Yeah, let's just write this code. I know it's a bit dense, but let's just write the code and we can refactor later. And then we effectively return query being executed. But in this case, we would say query get, and in this case, we would say query first. And then we would just return query. This works. You could wrap arguments, collection wrap arguments first. I don't know what turning it into a collections affords us. Okay, so let's just kind of run through this for a second and then we'll actually test it. So we just make a static query so we're able to kind of build upon it. If arguments 1 is set, we want to mirror what we found in find. Oops. Or well, I closed it. Whatever. Find accepts values to findBy and then the column names. So in this case, arguments is what we're going to select by. And then finally, if arguments 1 is an array, if you pass in an array, then we're going to search by all of those IDs or email addresses or whatever, right? Otherwise we just call where in first. Otherwise we give you a collection. So this behaves, theoretically, this behaves more or less just like find, except we can now find by a specific column and not have to write all of this craziness. So let's go see if it actually works and we'll kind of compare it to find. So let's get in here. Let's say user find. And the first thing we'll do is we'll just say user find 1, right? Now, theoretically, you wouldn't do this, but theoretically, you could say user find by ID 1, and it gives us the same thing. Perfect. Okay, let's ramp it up a bit, right? We could say this becomes find, we'll say 1, 2, okay? And it gives us the first and second models. Note, it's an Eloquent collection now. Let's do the same thing with findBy and see if it does it right. It does. 1, 2, it gives us a collection back. Cool. Now let's push the limits here with the columns that we get back. So here, I see what you're saying now, Tom. Let's pull this in here as email. Okay, so this should just give us a collection of email addresses. Boom. If we do the same thing with ours, find by ID. Again, we're just doing find by ID to be simple. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Tom's saying in the chat, though, that you can technically pass this a string. So dynamic. Okay, so technically you can pass this a string, but if we do this on ours, my guess is this might explode, or it might just work. It just works. It doesn't matter. My guess is select. My guess is underneath the covers, query builder select accepts an array or string. There's nothing special that they're doing with it. So there's no reason to wrap it. This just works. Because we're kind of just raw passing it on to select. Okay. This is good. This is good. So we did it here for parity between find and find by ID, but the point here is that you could put on anything. put on anything right there. So let's do it a little more dynamic, right? Let's say something like find by email, and there you go. But if we change this to like example.me, you get null, just as you would with first and that whole query. So again, just a tiny little shorthand, but in applications, it's especially something like Shift. It's very common for me in Shift to say, you know, Shift where, you know, skew is 11, skew is 12, right? Like for the 11.x and the 11 shift, the 12 shift, you know, all the numbers are in there, right? And I'm always writing that. So I wrote a find by skew, which really just expands the query out just as we have here. But there's a lot of cases where like you might look up a user by email address, you might look up a user by, you know, there's other kind of, obviously not primary keys, but there are other keys inside of your application where I think this is kind of worthwhile. So that's it. That's the trait. Let's go back and look at our code. Basically, in your model, you would just say use findBy, and this trait would be part of the package, and there it is. So so long as you prefix something by findBy, it's going to assume that that's a column, and it's going to behave the same as find. The only thing that's missing here, now again, technically, you know, it's find, not, you know, find by or whatever, but the only thing that's missing here is kind of the, you know, the or fail behavior, right? Do we want to do that? Do we want it to do or fail? You know, does find or fail exist for all of these different kind of nuanced things? You know, I don't know. It might be as simple as, you know, you can definitely do first or fail here, so that one's not that hard. Does this have like, is there a get or fail? I don't even know. Let's go test. Does this actually support that? So if I go here, if I go find or fail, it still returns 2. Cool. What if I do something that's non-existent, like 99 and 200? It does. No query result. So again, it would be pretty simple. It would be pretty simple to support the or fail behavior. It's just more of like, what does that look like? Is it like find by email or fail? Or sorry, let's take it off there. That's a little weird. You know, do you call that as in like user find by email or fail? Is it at the end? That's probably the most human readable. Or is it like find by or fail email? This gives you, the problem is, what if you had a column that was suffixed in or fail, right? How does that work? This, you just wouldn't be able to query. It wouldn't break, but you wouldn't be able to query with this kind of magic helper trait method. I think this one probably reads the best, but this one would overcome, having it here would be like, that would overcome any columns that, you know, had or fail in them, right? Were suffixed with or fail. So again, I don't think it would be very hard to add support for that. It's just kind of a matter of like thinking on that name a bit more. But I think this has value as it is. This is how I would use it immediately. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. So yeah, there's find or fail by. There's like 4 variations that are all kind of a toss up right here. So I would probably just want to see what the community thought about that instead of kind of making the choice right away. So I think the thing to do here is basically take this trait, pull it over into the package, put some tests around it like we were doing in Tinker, just call a model in an interesting way. And yeah, I think this is ready to go. So cool. I mean, this is it. So thanks everybody for joining live. We'll do a part 4 next week, try to go back to that policy stuff. But honestly, I think these 3 features are really kind of where I want to start. So there you have it. Thanks everybody. See you next week.